I think we're ready to call this meeting to order. We're going to start with a short chalice lighting. And John's going to light the chalice. This is a reading from Just One Thing by Rick Hansen. Everyone has dreams, goals, big plans, reasons for living, contributions to others. Many of these dreams are rooted in childhood visions of what's possible. When the young elements are peeled away, what remains is often still true for a person. What are your longings of the heart? If you are truly open to this question, what are the dreams that truly matter to me? You will hear your soul speaking, your essence, your core, your deepest inner wisdom. It's worth listening to what it says, and then looking for ways, practical ones, grounded in daily life, that move you forward one real step at a time to bring your dreams to life. The first order of business is to take a look at the agenda. So I'll give you a second to take a look at it. I'm not going to read it all, but if there's no objections, we will adopt this agenda. Okay. I think somebody is taking a count for a quorum. I don't know. While we get started. Okay. We should be fine based on online. Pardon me? I can tell we're already fine based on. Okay. Okay, so we have a quorum. Approval of the standing rules is the next thing on the agenda, and I'm going to read those. The standing rules for all of our congregational meetings are these. Members shall abide by the Foothills Covenant of Right Relations. No member shall speak more than once in debate on the same question until all members wishing to speak have done so. No member shall speak more than twice in debate on the same question. Comments made in debate shall be limited to a maximum of 2 minutes. To be called on, please raise your hand here or in the participant window on Zoom. Any motions to amend must be sent to the board email before the motion is made from the floor. So these are the standing rules, and now I will proceed to the covenant of right relations. We covenant to build a religious community guided by love and sustained by respectful relationships which work towards the greater and common good. Believing that building healthy relationships is a spiritual practice, we aim to listen appreciatively, speak with care, express gratitude, honor and value our differences, and assume good intentions. We will communicate directly, honestly, and compassionately, particularly when we are in conflict, and we will not expect to always get our own way. When we feel hurt or when we hurt others, we will try to forgive, make amends, and connect in a spirit of love. In celebration of the common purpose that unites us, we will do our best to abide by this covenant. And the next thing on the agenda, I believe, is the recognition of births and deaths. And I turn it over to the ministers.
Stand up here. Yeah. All right.
This is something we do every year at this meeting. kind of ritual acknowledgement, as our congregation is a community of both memory and hope. We remember those who have gone before us, their stories, dreams, and their failures. We hold all of these in our minds as we wrestle in the present and invest in the future.
We look to our children and grandchildren and hope for them a better world, that they will pick up the tasks we cannot complete, that they will forgive us our failures.
Each year at our annual meeting, we take time to remember and embrace this circle of life by naming and honoring the people in our congregation who have died in the past year, and naming and celebrating the babies we have welcomed in the past year.
As a covenantal religious community, our lives have been enriched and touched by those individuals who have been a part of our community and of our lives and no longer walk the way of life with us. So in the spirit of appreciation for those lives which we were privileged to share, we take this time of recollection and remembrance to honor them.
I invite you, wherever you are, to rise in body or in spirit, in both respect and recollection, as we recall the names of those among us, members and friends of this congregation, whose deaths in the last year have left us with the loss of their earthly presence.
Their lives continue to sustain and enrich us with precious memories, the gifts they brought to this community, and the ways their presence shaped our story that will live ever on.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Peter Akama.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Linda Beers.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Nels Brasti.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Janet Brubaker.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Jonathan Farwell.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Don Hahn.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Norm Elsley.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of John Kutzik.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Chester McQuarrie.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Katie Miller.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Judy Sorby Dunn.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Rick Wells.
In the spirit of sacred remembrance, we recall the life of Glenn Zanke.
We also stand in silent respect and remembrance for loved ones who have also died this past year, family members, cherished friends, and colleagues. We mourn their loss and give thanks for their lives.
Even as we remember the past, we also look to the dawning future with hope and with gratitude. We are grateful for every child who was born this year, and we lift up now those in our community as an acknowledgement of the circle of life.
In the spirit of resilient hope, we welcome the life of Romeo Nelson Enrique Arenas, who might be the cutest, but it's just my opinion.
It's Gretchen's grandbaby.
In the spirit of resilient hope, we welcome the life of Freddie Fairfax.
In the spirit of resilient hope, we welcome the life of Lily Rose Lura.
We acknowledge and celebrate all of the births from this past year and the many new beginnings we've discovered and created. New jobs, new schools, new retirements, new homes. We welcome these as gifts with hope and openness, knowing that we are always creating together a new community of memory and of life.
We are grateful to be a community that embraces all these parts of life, both beginnings and endings, and even more the living that exists in between. For all that is our life, we give our thanks and our praise.
Amen and blessed
Amen.
be.
Is it me next? Oh, gosh. Okay, hold on. I'm going to have to, I'm going to need help is what is going to need to happen because it's not going to come up fast enough. Sean, do you have the slides that I could borrow from yours? Sorry, I was caught focused on finding that script and forgot to find the actual slides. Thank you. How are we doing? So good to see all of you here. This is the, just as a reminder, we have 2 congregational meetings in the year, one in June-ish and one now-ish. And this one is the one that we take time it's much more of the ministry focus. We look at kind of how we've done in terms of our programs and our ministry and our mission. The other one is more governance focused, so we take the time to elect our officers and other governance-oriented business. So thus, I'm going to offer a little bit of a ministry look back over the course of the year. So you can go, yep, great. So that's the end of that slide. We're going to look back a little. So we didn't exactly put this out at the beginning of the year, but this was the way we thought about our strategies for the course of this year, particularly after Trump's election. We realized we needed to get a lot more focused in how we thought about this. Was not our first time with Trump being elected. And so we knew there would be a big influx of people, but what we learned from the last time is you could get a big influx of people, but that doesn't mean those people hang around or become partners in the work after the initial first few months after the election. So we tried to think about that differently this time, and also think about the second and third and fourth year of his presidency, because there's going to theoretically at least be a second. And because what we saw also is a lot of burnout from our people fighting in areas of justice and compassion. So we tried to think about how to be more sustainable. So our 3 strategies in thinking about that was, first of all, to focus in on the idea of groups as how we do everything. So you probably have seen that. The groups are how we do church. Then focusing on what we call our sacred calling and essential impact, that is to think about what we can uniquely do as a religious organization and where our niche is, and then to continue to bring us back to in everything we do that the path requires partnership. That's bringing people into partnership here, and also how we work in partnership with the wider community. So those were our orienting strategies throughout this year. I'm going to talk a little bit about them, but first, I'm going to talk about worship. You can see worship's not in one of those strategies because we think of worship as a leading indicator towards everything else. It is if worship isn't working, nothing else can work, but also it's not the end. It is not what is going to actually bring us towards accomplishing our mission in a deep sense of partnership and transformation, that there's other things that bring us towards those things. So worship is an entry point, and it tells you how many people are potentially going to come into partnership, but it doesn't tell you have they come into partnership. So this is just going to give you a little preview of thinking about worship by looking at worship over the past couple of years, and even we'll go a little bit further back than that. So we moved, just for those of you that are kind of new or newer, we moved into this space in 2023, in December of 2023. That basically, it took us from a capacity of about 300 on a Sunday to about 650 or so, 700 if you're really squeezing in. So it was a big shift in what was available. And since then, we have been consistently filling seats, as you have probably noticed. So this is from the past year. Oh, go back. We'll get to that, but this one is from just this past year of attendance in 2025. The top line there shows you this year, and the bottom line is the last year. Those don't get too caught in the numbers there. Those are like total, it's such a confusing number, but basically it means if you add up all the people in a given month that came, those are the numbers, but those are duplicates too. So it just more what's important there is the trend. So you can see there's some big leaps between this year and last year. This year we averaged we're currently averaging as of right now 502 people on a Sunday. That's in person 437. Online we average about 65. These are live participation. So people who are, hello friends who are on Zoom, you're counted in that 65, and anybody who watches at the 11 o'clock and checks in live, it does not count if you're watching later at the gym. Those are also, we know that's happening. People talk to, I don't know about you guys, but people will talk to me about how they listen to my sermon while on the treadmill. I'm that's interesting. So last year we averaged, I'm not able to see my notes, so I can't tell you, but I think that it is, hold on, I can tell you actually. View, nope, not that. Speaker notes. Nope, it's not on that. Maybe it's on that, nope. Nope, I think it's 400 and something. Yeah, does that seem fair? 400 and something. We've basically been going into this over the past couple of years. We've been taking a leap. You can go to the next slide. We've been taking a leap each of the years as we've added more capacity to a next plateau. But this graph actually takes us all the way back to 2021. And when we were kind of averaging, 2021 was a sad year. We were averaging somewhere in the range of about 200 a Sunday. So that was the pandemic. We were in pandemic fatigue and nobody wanted to be online anymore, but also we weren't gathering. You remember? So we were averaging 200 a Sunday. As we moved into that next plateau, it brings us to 2024. We start to average closer to 350. By the end of 24, we were getting up to 400. By this past year, we're averaging 500. Okay, so this has been a huge leap. And actually, if you look back over the course of the last 10 years, every time we've added space, we've added people. But what that also means is that we are about to hit another plateau because, I'm sorry, building team, we are filling this, we're hitting a capacity in this space. So part of what I wanted to share with you is to think we're filling it, we're doing such a good job, and also we need to think about what that is going to ask of us as we start to hit that capacity and when we hit that plateau. And, don't worry, we have some ideas. It's not another building and it's not a third service. So, okay, so I just have a couple things I want to note about worship. I want to lift up the worship services that we've offered over this year. I feel very proud about that and of the systems that are now in place that truly did not exist in the last year. A year ago right now, so much has come into being, and that also this year we didn't go to a single service over any part of the year. That's the first time, definitely since we've been in this space. That was primarily due to demand. We just couldn't fit people in this sanctuary in a single service. It was also the first time in our history ever that we averaged more than 400 in attendance for the whole year. I want to give a big shout out to Sean and Elaine for their leadership in worship over the course of my sabbatical. I have gone back and listened to a number of the sermons from that time, and I'm just so freaking impressed about it. And if you haven't heard some of those, or if you forgot, I really encourage you to go back. You can find in Church Center or on the podcast itself, which you can find in Spotify or any place you find podcasts. All of our past sermons are there, which that too is also something we improved this year thanks to our new worship production manager, Kyle, who's back there. I want to especially just lift up Sean's preaching earlier in the year that ended up in one of the funniest parenting moments I've ever had, where my son texted me from his government class at Fort Collins High School and played me, like he was like playing me a live recording of what was happening, and it was Sean's sermon. Which gives me a real mixed feeling about, like, you know, separation of church and all that, but I did think it was a nice balance to the fact that they're also praying with the evangelical pastor and his football team. So in other words, like, the messages we're offering on Sundays are not just having an impact here, they're having an impact out in the wider community. The other thing I wanted to lift up is that right now, a year ago, we were telling you about our innovative idea for the interim time for music ministry, which would be led by this wild idea of having a remote music director, Sophia Miller, and this has been a really, like, such a success. I feel like we kind of got to stop talking about it. It was great, but also what's made that possible is the people who are here every single Sunday offering such incredible music. Particularly, I'd lift up Julie, who is here almost every Sunday and is such a gift to us. And also the way that Sophia has brought organization from afar. It's just incredible. Also, our AV team and volunteers really have come into being over this year. Thank you to anybody who's volunteered or who wants to volunteer. We're ready for you. We, with Kyle's leadership, it really is an incredible, we rely so much on that team, so thank you. And last but not least is our hospitality and safety team volunteers. Everybody who's out there, I love seeing you all in the huddle on Sundays. And just, if you aren't a part of that team, I just encourage you to try it out, because it's such a cool thing to see the team preparing for the rest of you to show up. It's just, it really puts I feel like it's our mission embodied, so thank you. I think that's it that I want to say on worship. We're going to keep going. We're actually in the strategies now. I promise the rest is not quite. I had a lot to say about that. Okay, so on our group engagement, for after worship, we think, okay, everybody needs to find a group, because group is where belonging happens. And we're proud to have made huge progress in bringing people into groups over the course of this year. We ask for feedback, and we consistently receive very positive feedback about group experiences, which is even more clear from the ways people keep signing up. So that seems like evidence of you're feeling good about the groups. This graph here does not take into account justice or team-based groups. I want to especially give a shout out here to our small group leaders who make this possible. Thank you. And for your consistent care and showing up, thank you. And also to Elaine, who stewards so many groups with such care, and to Bugs, who makes sure the rooms get ready for us. I mean, it's just a whole group effort doing groups. And Elaine especially for making sure all those journey group curriculum get done. Thank you. So over the course of the winter and fall, when we have the most groups happening, we have about 450 to 600 unique monthly participants. That's phenomenal. Over the summer, about 300 unique participants. That doesn't, it could all be within that same people, but our care-based groups, those are pastoral care groups, are somewhere average in the range of 30 to 50 people. That's a huge number of people that are moving through groups in one way or another. So thank you for joining, and we hope we just get to keep growing, because we know how powerful groups can be. You can go to the next one, which is our group. I call them groups in transition, which is we think of what we offer to our kids and youth as groups as well. So in family ministry, you can see that here kids and youth engagement does lag our adult engagement. So as we've seen since the pandemic, you saw it in worship attendance, adult attendance is really exponentially grown. Kids has not. So this is it's something we're looking at and thinking about. Some of that is just we're being faced at at a district level. From the school district, they're talking about decline enrollment. That's from just decline birth rates and fewer kids around. But that's not all of what's going on. So we want to keep working on this. We know that there was a major shift with the retirement of Eleanor Van Dusen in August. So we have this huge change organizationally that we're moving through. And we didn't start our groups this year for kids until October. Also, I wanted to lift up that we are offering OWL on track, so that's always that's, for those of you that don't know, that's our lifespan sexuality education program. We will start a major revisioning program of our groups and how we do groups for kids and youth starting in January, with a hope to start some new things by the fall. I want to especially thank the volunteers who stepped up to lead groups this year. We couldn't be doing any of this without you, and it really does make a huge difference, and I hope it's been fun. I'm really enjoying working with Lauren McTighe and with the whole new team there, so I hope you are too. Okay, the next one, which is our sacred calling and focusing on our sacred calling and essential impact. I just want to lift up some of our work here. We thought a lot about, early in the year, this idea of who are we called to protect? What's our calling for protecting people over perfect plans or perfect systems, having everything figured out, that we had a real calling to protect people. So in the list that has emerged over the course of this year, our immigrant neighbors through our partnership with Isaac and Project Protect, and providing food and ESL and accompaniment, and being part of an emerging rapid response network. I want to lift up, if you want to be a part of that, you could talk to Mary Lou, but also come to December 14th, December 21st, and early in January, we're going to be having a series of conversations to get us more into that rapid response network. Also, those seeking reproductive health care through accompaniment at Planned Parenthood, support for the Wellspring Clinic in Wyoming, and through ongoing, thank you to everybody who brings the period products. They are the first thing to be gone on Food Bank Sundays. So if you are not somebody that's in that list that asks for those, know that every other week we're collecting them and we hand them out, and they're always gone first. So if you have any extra around, or just you're at the store and you feel like picking up some, just know we always have a place and they're always needed. Also, trans and queer people of all ages through our True You monthly support group for young kids and their families, our transparent group for parents of adult trans kids, mutual aid for those fleeing unsafe states, and a local partnership with our drag community, which will be most on display at our upcoming Drag Christmas, including through our new mutual aid fund, Fears Together. Other people that have been targeted currently, we're focusing on our food security fund and the food bank, which, as you can see, is it is the most active it's been since our first year we launched it, which coincidentally was in 2017, the first full year of Trump's other presidency. And finally, our sacred relationship with all of nature. We've done a lot of big changes in how we think about our relationship and our call around climate change and our relationship with the earth this year. I really am so grateful for all those who've tended to our garden. If you weren't out there this summer, wow, it was just phenomenal. Go be a part of it next year. It gives you hope. The team that's committed to the sustainable practices within the church, our Natural Connections group, and those who bring us that out into the intention in the world. And also one more, which is the work we've done with Together Colorado for organizing, and you can see there are a bunch of other partners that we've been in relationship with this year. Finally, on the path of partnership, after a series of years with net negative membership, we're grateful for 2 solid years that we think will end up being membership growth. We're at -4 this year, but we think we're on track to be on, by the end of this year, a net positive for by the end of this year. So that means we'll show 36 people this year leaving membership and about the same number joining. It's a confusing thing, because it's like, okay, why did we lose 36 people? A lot of them are because 24 of them were non-responsive this year. Those are usually a big lag, so it's usually that it takes 2 years to clean somebody out to eventually remove them from membership. So they actually probably stopped coming in the range of 2 years ago, and we gave them 2 years to try to re-engage. So it's an important number, but it's not a super forward-looking number. That's why the worship is a better leading number. This is a better lagging number, if that makes sense. Okay, the last thing I want to say is I want to recognize the Foothills teams and the partnership we've been able to be in through this over this year. I just went through and made a list of every team, or volunteer group that exists in the congregation. I probably forgot one, and you can tell me after. But more than 250 people are regularly volunteering at church. This is phenomenal. And represents a huge amount of partnership in how we're making all of this possible. So thank you. This is also a huge sign of growth and stability for the congregation, because if you just think about the more people that are engaged in this partnership, the more that people are invested, not just in this moment, but in the future. So I'm feeling really excited about this, and like I said, very grateful. Our current, go to the next one. The current membership right now is 546. It's pretty much been that since I started 13 years ago. I just like that, I don't know what to say. It doesn't quite make sense other than that we just keep our membership rolls very, very clean. I thought it was also interesting to offer to you, we keep other designations of people in our database. Newcomers, those are the people that are like literally they've done one thing, they've just barely shown up. There's 600 people that are currently designated as newcomers. There are seekers, which is people who've done 3 things in 3 months. And so they're not just newcomers, they've actually done some stuff. We've got 773 of those. Travelers are those people who basically act like members but aren't members. They've done all the things to be qualified for membership but haven't actually joined. We got 66 of those. And then we have this group called re-engaging, which is you're one of those other 3 that left for a while and now you're coming back. We've got 150 or so of those. Those are all, we keep those very clean. They automatically, you go into an inactive status after a relatively short period of time, and then you get re-engaged, you get into the re-engaging category if you come back. So those are real numbers. That total means that we have over 2,000 people who are actively engaged in the life of the congregation. That feels like a lot more accurate number than the 546 members seems to tell me as a story of what's the life of the congregation like. That's just adults, by the way. Looking ahead for look at it says key plans for 2025. Apparently I'm still in the current year. I'm not ready to look ahead yet, but we are going to nonetheless. 2026 is what I meant. Go to the next slide before anybody thinks about that too much. So we will be hiring a music director, one who lives here. And next year, we have a teaser that's actually been posted already. You can find it at foothillsuu.org/jobs. That'll be going out on social media in the next couple weeks. We'll be engaging with you all or anyone who would like to, and we'll be really hoping you'll come talk to us in the month of January, including a save the date. January 11th, we'll be having a conversation about kind of where we're going, what we've learned. In this interim period, we will post the position nationally in February. We will start interviews in March and April. We'll have our final interview in May and make an offer. We'll start training in July with a start date in August. One of us will not be here for that, and that is specifically Elaine, who is going to be taking sabbatical. This is Elaine's first sabbatical in 15 years of ordained ministry. And we are so, so happy for her that she'll get to take sabbatical. We will also miss her desperately, so we are definitely hiring additional pastoral care staff to help Sean and I with her absence, because if you've worked with Elaine at all, you know how much she does. So we will be adding a little extra staff in there. There's no other changes to staffing anticipated. No other changes to staffing. We currently employ just over 11 FTEs. That represents 8 full-time, 4 part-time employees, 4 music contractors, and 6 super part-time staff that support our kids. We also work with a lot of key staff that aren't represented in that are contractors for our custodial needs, for our grounds, and really critically, our financial controls. That ends my presentation. I am thrilled to hand things over to the other part of what's going to be happening in 2026 with our visioning committee.
Well, I'm going to pass the mic over to Melissa,
All right.
who's going to share an update from the visioning committee.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, my name's Melissa Archer. I am one of the members of the Visioning Committee, helping our congregation meet the moment. I think we should have a slide. There we go. Meet the moment. That's the name of the game, Visioning for Our Future. And so if you go on to the next slide, why are we visioning right now? So back in 2016, Foothills adopted our mission statement, and then in 2018, we developed guiding values and a vision statement, or vision statements, to give the mission tangible direction. Then the church committed at that time to vision every 5 to 7 years, and here we are at that next visioning process. And we have realized that our previous vision was bold and comprehensive, but that we needed to focus, need a focusing lens, not to shrink our vision, but to sharpen it. So on to the next slide. So who is Meet the Moment? So this includes the board and the Visioning Committee. Would any members of the Visioning Committee please stand up and wave? If you're here, I see a couple. Sarah, too. And so we have been developing and overseeing this process. It's a group of about 10 of us, and we've been analyzing and elaborating on these findings. We also had the wisdom cohorts meet earlier this year. This was a series of small groups of targeted demographics. Some of you may have been a part of that process. And that was about identifying the needs and opportunities of this moment from those various perspectives. And those participants drafted visionary statements based on the needs and opportunities of this moment. And then you may remember those of us in the Visioning Committee hounding everyone to participate in the vision mapping tool. And we had 541 respondents to that, which was over our goal of 500. That's a really big deal. And everyone who participated in that responded to a set of 40 visionary statements about whether you agree, disagree, or pass. And this gave us a lot of clarity. So on to the next slide. So rather than simply refreshing aspirational language we mostly already agree on, Meet the Moment is taking a different approach by, first of all, lifting up areas of engagement and consensus as foundations for emerging focus, so starting on where there's consensus. 2, identifying generative tensions where honest conversation can sharpen our direction. And then 3, creating space for voices to be heard and people to be seen across those differences. So kind of the finding where we agree, identifying those creative tensions, and then having those conversations. And one more slide for me before Sarah comes up. So our key insights so far, the one insight that runs through all of the data is that the division tends to be more around the how rather than the what. So we largely agree on our aspirations about the kind of community we want to be and the values that we want to embody. We're pretty clearly on the same page about those things. And then the tensions emerge when we move toward implementation, the tangible, structural, and strategic questions of how we actually organize our life together. And so those are going to be some interesting conversations. I'm going to invite Sarah up to talk a little bit more about the emergent themes and what we've kind of discovered in this process so far.
Thanks, Melissa. All right. The Visioning Committee took all of your responses to that vision mapping tool and spent a lot of time trying to figure out what it all meant. So we're going to present just a very little bit of a snapshot of that today. So here are some of the emergent themes. First, relationship as the engine that powers courageous love. It's consistent with what you heard from Gretchen about relationship kind of and those small groups being at the center of what we do. Second, The importance of claiming our religious, specifically religious identity as Unitarian Universalists. Third, a theme that was about kind of foundational spiritual practices, the things that we as individuals and collectively commit to doing some inner work. Fourth, very clear longing for belonging, and specifically across generations. There was a lot of that came up in the data. The need for focus, discerning our shared priorities and how important that is. Sixth, honoring tradition and embracing change. This one is sort of reflecting some differences in people who've been around for a longer time and newer folks to Foothills. And finally, engaged community, thinking about ways that we receive while we're at church, and we also participate in co-creating the work that we do together. So those are very high level. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about two of them, just so you can kind of see what our process is, and then we'll have an opportunity for a few questions. So one of those themes that I just told you about, we've called focus, discerning our priorities. So here's what we agree on. When Melissa was up here, she was telling you a little bit about the process and the ways that we were looking for both agreement and tension. So here's what we agree on. Focus amplifies impact. We value long-term organizational health and financial stability that balances our internal needs as a congregation with agile mission response. We are generous despite our fears and uncertainty. We're pretty much in agreement on those things. And then there's some tension that leads us to what we're kind of calling the harder questions. How do we do this, right? It's important to focus, to discern what our priorities are, and how we do that is complicated. So how do we discern shared priorities without silencing minority passions? What criteria do we use to help us say our faithful yeses and also, really importantly, our faithful nos? And what are we willing to stop doing so that we can do something else with depth? Yeah. All right, then I'm going to tell you just a little bit about another one of those themes, that is claiming our religious identity. Here's what we agree on. When we speak out, we are grounded in our faith and tradition. That's important to us. We engage in inner and interpersonal practices that are aligned with our UU values as the foundation for our courageous work together. The harder question, what does it mean to claim our religious identity in ways that clarify our unique contribution? Right? There are lots of people doing important work. What is it about our religious identity that leads us to the work that we do? And what might it look like to expect spiritual growth and religious engagement, not just shared values, as part of what it means to belong here? These are harder questions, right? So what comes next? We're going to be having some congregational conversations in the new year, tackling some of those harder questions, sharing and receiving perspectives as we hone our vision for the coming years. So stay tuned. We did want to give just a few minutes here for specific questions if people have them. If that feels okay, is that okay? Okay? All right. All right, questions specifically about the visioning process. Yeah, Erin, can I bring this to you? Yeah,
ready. I was curious to hear more about the honoring tradition while embracing change. Or if you're not ready for that and you're going to do it in the new year.
No, there's a lot there. I think one of the things that we noticed and Sarah's just hiding now because you're just moving the mic. Sarah did a lot of really interesting data analysis where we looked at how people answered the survey based on how long they were members. And one of the things that we saw was before 2015, the answers from that group and people who joined after 2015, there were some like significant differences in terms of priorities. One of the members of the visioning committee, Bruce, said something really that's stuck with me, is he said that a lot of us long-timers kind of think about where we are right now as something precious that we've had to fight to build and protect and create. And people who have arrived since what has been built don't have that same sense because they weren't a part of that. And so there's a different way of relating to it. And what Bruce shared in that kind of anecdote is neither one is the wrong way to approach it, but either they both have truth in terms of how we relate to it. And so I think living in that tension of what does it mean that we have these differences of opinion or perspective on what the church is and who the church is for, based on something as simple as a membership date, it shows us that there's something to be learned in some conversation. And so that was one of the areas of I think we think really creative tension for us to engage. Because I think the conversation we don't want to have is who has more people now, right? Oh, well, there's more people who've joined since 2015, therefore they get to decide. Like, that's not actually a pluralistic way to approach these sorts of questions, but rather what is the meaningful dialogue that occurs when we can hear each other and create something together that honors both the past and also that dawning future, if we're going to go with that hymn reference. So that's a bit of it.
Hi, Jeanette Meyer, she, her. I wondered if you could help me understand how the word religion or religious was really focused on and verbally as well as in the italics. I get courageous love, I get service, but could you expand on what the word religion and how it fits in that context? Thank you.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because that's the conversation. Right? I think what we've noticed is that there is, again, a difference of perspective and comfort with religious language and thinking about ourselves in terms of what does it mean, both expectations, but also language and identity, and that there's a difference of perspective within the congregation. And so that's exactly the conversation that we need to have with each other, is to say, tell me about this word. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? And what happens when we hear each other in that clarification? So I don't want to go too deep into like the kind of framing in here, because I think the framing just tees up the conversation for us to have as a congregation to get clear on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just a reminder that the themes themselves are not the vision.
Yeah.
Right? The themes are the things that kept coming up over and over as places both with agreement and tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe one more question? There you go.
I was just reflecting on the previous slide that showed the large number of people who have been involved in the church related to the number of people who are members. Mm-hmm. Not that there's a lot of tension in that, that's just reality, but I wonder if our visioning activities are going to focus on any way bridging that kind of difference. I mean, is there going to be a practical aspect that we consider of visioning to help us draw in people who are visitors long-term, as opposed to members who feel committed to the church?
Whew. I think there's a few things to say. I think the first thing to say is we have made an intentional commitment here to say that we want membership to mean something, in terms of to say that there's an expectation that, you can't just become a member, the day you walk in the door. In fact, it takes at least 3, if not 6 months to become a member here, which is different than many other communities because we want it to mean something. And the tension of that reality with the fact that there are so many people who think of themselves as members, act like members, pledge, and are not members. I think there's probably generational differences going on here in just the patterns of life that mean that is, again, one of these tensions of, as Gretchen said, what does it mean that in the last 10 years we haven't changed in members? Actually, we've probably gone down 40 members in the last 10 years, but we have probably 4 times the number of people actively involved in the church. What does that mean, right? It probably means that the one metric of becoming a member doesn't tell us the whole story of what it means to be a part of this congregation. And yet we think that there's something meaningful about that movement of membership that we want to maintain. So I would hope that our process of visioning would be clarifying and focusing how we how we operate as a church in a way that would be enticing and engaging for people to kind of stick around, because there's something transformative that happens here, and there's transformative work that we're doing in the community together, and that partly that would translate into a shift in membership numbers. And yet in the last 10 years, I think everything that I just said about what I hope for has been true and is true and hasn't shifted and changed that membership number. And so that's just a paradox I'm sitting with, of like what to do with that. And if you have answers to that question, please let us know, because it's kind of confounding to me. I don't know, Gretchen, you're grabbing your microphone.
One more thing to say about that. We talk about it.
Your microphone is not on, yeah.
I took my microphone off so I wouldn't accidentally talk into it. But I think it's off. Okay. You basically said this. I'm just going to say it another way, which is we think the notion of committed intentional membership still has a lot of meaning and has a lot of power, transforming both you and also us. It means something. And those 1,500 other people are committed in their own ways too. And it's not like, in some ways, actually, some of the members
Are less committed
and are less around and are doing fewer things. So it's a really complex, strange, confusing thing, how somebody decides to like name themselves as a member versus when they don't. And I would caution us to think it's that the only transformative unit is membership. Mm-hmm. And instead to get curious about what is the whole story that we're hearing here, and that there's many different pieces at work, and also to get curious about the demographic component of that and what it means that just generationally we see a lot less inclination to membership in different generations. So. Yeah.
So our hope in the Visioning Committee is to be able to lift up in some kind of written work more of these tensions, these questions, and these things we're learning, to kind of bring that to you, so that when we start these conversations that I really hope we can be honest and direct with each other in, we'll be able to get at a lot of these things, right? Our hope is that in these conversations we'll be able to bring a depth of what our experience of the church is and our hopes for the church is, rooted in our history, be it long or short, and from that place trust that together something will emerge. That really is the foundation of where we know these conversations are going to go. Marty, we said one more question, but you're the exception. What's your question? I could repeat it. I think I can hear you.
I'm going to sound like the old generation curmudgeon. I found the survey so inadequate in its focus on our specific congregation that I don't think it captured as much as it should have. So your next go-round, I hope it's a locally designed survey that is really much more specific about this congregation.
I'll say, Marty, that this was an intensely locally developed survey, and that the committee spent hours looking at the data and the contributions and the notes from the various wisdom cohorts to develop these statements. They spent hours and hours trying to understand what are the themes of what's being represented back based on those conversations. And so I hear that it didn't feel like it struck you as representative, and that's a meaningful data point. But I don't think it is true to say that it was not developed from what this congregation has shared, because it really was. And so I hope that in these next rounds, that this is we set the foundation for some good conversations, and then we can bring our experience to those conversations that'll be more than just a yes/no response on a survey. But what the survey really helped us do is identify which conversations we need to have and where those tensions are. And that is helpful because it's a very big scope in which we're thinking of visioning. So to be narrowing down to some key questions is really helpful. All right. Yeah, that's it.
The next thing on our agenda, I'm going to ask Bonnie Insgo to come up. There she is. She's representing the nominating committee.
Thank you. Okay, well, you all are focused on this meeting, and those of us on the nominating committee, that's myself and Cheryl Hazlitt and Kay Williams, we're focused on the June meeting, because in June, we will have a slate of candidates prepared for the congregation to vote on, and that will be for church officers, board members. And this year, we're going to be looking for 3 new board members, because Mary and John Hill and Beth Adams are all stepping down this year. We also will have 1 position to vote on for the nominating committee, because Cheryl Hazlitt's term will be ending. So the way we do this is quite a process, and it starts in the fall. We've already begun. It's collaboration with the board and the ministry to discern who might be ready to step up into leadership in the church in these capacities. And so we begin to identify some people and invite them, but we can't know, who all might be interested. So if you're at all interested, now's a good time to let Gretchen or Mary or John on the board or any one of us on the nominating committee know of your interest. And you may think, well, I don't know enough to know if I'm interested. What does it mean to be a board member or on the nominating committee? So I have an opportunity for you. On January 29th, we're going to have a meeting here at the church at 6:30, and I'm not sure what day of the week that is. I think it's a Sunday. Thursday, not even close. It's an informational session to learn more about these leadership roles on the board and nominating committee. I believe the first time they had one of these was last year, and it was very successful. A lot of people attended, and from that, we were able to have a list of names that reflected what people might be interested in, their level of interest. You wouldn't be expected to make a commitment at that meeting, but just to learn. I think even if you're just kind of interested in how this all works, it would be valuable. So we'll have a broader invitation come out. I know it'll be in the Grove newsletter and perhaps in the weekly email, but we just want to give you a heads up and hope. There are a lot of you in this room I think have already served, and I see a lot of people who I think, that person might be good. So everybody's avoiding eye contact. I know. So we hope you'll watch for that announcement in January and think about attending.
Thanks, Bonnie. And now it's the time for Katie to do the budget presentation. Do you need this?
I don't, I have that.
Okay.
been an hour, so if you need to like stand up and like shake out a little bit, for those of you who were at church too this morning, it's a long time sitting in these comfortable chairs. It is my privilege to get to share the finance update and our 2026 budget with you all today. You can go to the next slide, but I want to be really clear that it is not something that I have worked on my own. And I'd like to invite any of the people who are on this list, which is our board of trustees, our finance team, the ad hoc support team that worked on financial scenarios, Kendra Hull, I think, is online, and our Generosity Builders team to just stand up right now so we can just see kind of all of the... And there's more people online, too, that's representative of. And so just when we share this information, I am often the face of it, but we spend many, many hours prior to this having in-depth discussions about it. You can go ahead to the next slide. So I wanted to present the results of our pledge drive as of right now. And yes, big clap, right? So this is my 6th pledge campaign with Foothills, and we have never reached our goal in December. So we always increase over the course of the year, and so we typically end with a good amount still to go. And so we're $7,500 away as of the committed funds right now. So I'm like, my challenge is like, by the time I get back to my desk, we have made, I'm gonna make a particular invite to those of you that are in the 3,500 range to consider joining our Chalice Club at $5,000 a year. We just need a couple of you. The other thing that I want to note is just the number of households too. We'll get to 450 by the end of the year, but it's just remarkable to continue to spread that out over so many people participating in giving. And you can go ahead to the next slide, Kyle. So we did it a little different this year in terms of sharing with you all sort of the goals. We really wanted to make it visibly apparent that it takes all of us, that we want each person to wrestle individually with what is it that you have to contribute, and know that your contribution matters. And so it was exciting to just see the way this happened over the course of the year, or over the course of the campaign, and to just highlight how many people were participating in this and at what levels. And so our median pledge this year is about $1,200. That's about where we've been the last couple of years. But we are at a total of about $123,000, or 14% up in our total pledging at this point, which is amazing and something we needed to do. That, in terms of inviting others, I said this a couple of times this year, the most important thing you can do is talk about it, make sure people know that we fund ourselves, and invite them to participate at that low level. If we were to hit our household goal and our dollar goal, it would take just, I did the math, where's my math? It would take just 21 households pledging at $30 a month. So inviting someone to join at that sort of like beginning level and just say, hey, if you're coming here once a month and you could do $30, that it matters. There is an ownership piece that comes into the moment of participating regularly in giving at Foothills. Okay, go on to the next slide. There's also something I did a little bit differently this year. We've been in such complex financial territory for the past several years. This presentation has been pretty lengthy to try to remind us where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. Many of you have heard it a lot of times, and we have just some shifting in who's here, and so I separated it into a couple of things this year. This on the left is our What It Takes to Sustain Foothills. I have copies of those if any of you are newer and would be interested in learning exactly how we fund ourselves, what the building expenses were, how that sort of translates to where we are today. That's kind of in-depth context for the past 5 to 7 years of where we've been financially. And then I separated out the 2026 budget specifics, and so all of you should have had the opportunity to get that on your way in. Scott, if you can put the link in the chat online so that people can see it there. And then there's one other document I have that if you are nerdy and would like to see the detail budget, I've got a few copies of those printed, or email me if you're online and I'll send it to you. If that describes you, I would invite you to look next year for the in-depth discussion that we had. We had a meeting earlier this week on Tuesday night where we had a more robust discussion. I talked about half the time, and then the group asked questions for about 40 minutes of their thoughts about where we were and what questions they had. So definitely keep an eye out for that if that's a place that you have a lot of questions. And as I always say, I have an open door, and I love to talk about how we do what we do here. And so I'd be happy to answer questions for individuals. Go on to the next slide. So one thing that is not represented in that 2026 packet that the group that was there on Tuesday night really, both as a whole and wanted us to make sure even though we are separating kind of that bigger context that we continue to talk about, we are in a state of still managing the debt that it took to build this sanctuary. So in very short words, we built it a post-pandemic economy, which was high inflation and increases in interest rates. And so we ended up about double the debt we had intended at double the interest rate. And if we continue to see our debt out in its current form, we'll pay over $1 million in finance fees over time. And so this is a challenge that we all have, and particularly to the folks that are newer in the room and who didn't get the opportunity to participate. It is an opportunity to participate in building this sanctuary. This is the real challenge we're facing right now. And so it's about 23% of our asset to debt, the ratio, which is, it's healthy as an organization. So we're not like in danger as an organization, but a lot of that is the equity that we have in the building too. So that doesn't all sit in our bank account. The bank account is actually pretty low comparatively. And so just to know that the context of how we're talking about our this year's budget is in view of this. And then at the very end, I'll talk about sort of the 5-year trajectory. And so those two things are really important to keep in mind as we talk specifically about 2026. You can go on to the next one. So we have 3 strategies to eliminate the debt and to create a long-term financial sustainability plan. One is the pledge campaign this fall to get to $1 million was a big push for us, and we have done it. By the time the meeting's over, I know it's going to happen. And then we have 2 other parts that we're working on this year as primary goals. So one of those is a one-time campaign to raise $1 million to help us continue to manage that cash balance, actually. Because of the way that our year works, we have lower cash at a certain point in the year, and so that will help us manage the next 5 years. We are right now in a deficit budget, which means that we are bringing in less income than we are expenses. That is an intentional plan that we made as a congregation so that we could resource the church that you're sitting in right now, that we would be able to have the staffing and programming that was appropriate for this size church, but we would love to have that go away as soon as possible. So that working on that $1 million campaign and then refinancing the debt to a lower level. We're at a 6.99% interest rate right now. It's untenable. We can't do it. We have to stop it. It's costing us so much money. And what it really means is it's costing us mission. We can't spend those dollars on the work that we so agreed on that we're here to do because we're paying them to a bank. And so if you are someone, we have a commercial loan right now. We will be looking for a private loan that will either be through an institution or individuals. We have worked really hard the last few years, all those people who stood up and who are on these committees, to have our financials in a place where this organization can receive an investment, that our books are in a place where we could go to someone and say, we know exactly how to manage that kind of investment. And so I would just love you to reflect, if you're somebody who's been given more income, about the opportunity to invest in Foothills, invest in our future and help us take less of that to the bank. And so I have a couple of congregants that have reached out. If you could make a commitment at a $500,000 level, which I know is big and not for most people, but it is for a few, please let me know, because the best case scenario would be to do it internally. We're also going to be working with other institutions within our the Unitarian Universalist Association, and some other local places. It's a high priority for me this year that we end 2026 with a different mortgage. And then the most important, I was like, where's it? Most importantly is to balance the budget by 2028. So when we made that plan, it was a 5-year plan of moving toward covering our operating costs. And so we would really love by the end of 2 years from now that we are not deficit budgeting. And so those are kind of the strategies that we're working on as a whole. You can go to the next slide. So then we would look at 2026 specifically. First of all, this is showing you the end of 2025. So the orange is what we budgeted, and then the pink is where we landed, and then blue is what we're proposing for next year. So it's been a really great year in terms of generosity. This congregation has shown up. Our new folks who have shown up have given. We raised about $90,000 more than we were anticipating raising this year. So that reduces the deficit that we experienced this year over what we planned. And our expenses are really coming into a place of more reliably the same as we've been through the process of opening the new building and housing this building. There's a lot that we have been like, we think it'll be in this range, but it was hard to know. We really are getting really tight on how we're able to budget for the expenses, which is super helpful. And so you'll see there's a slight increase from the budgeted plan from this year, and for a couple of different things, but really we've stayed in a similar level. We're not increasing or changing too much. You can go on to the next one. So this is just 2026, and this picture here, this is to demonstrate the deficit budgeting in particular. So you can see in the blue, that's the income we expect to bring in this year. That does not include the $1 million one-time campaign, that's operating income. And then you can see the expenses that we'll have. Of those expenses that are more than our income, $285,000 of that will go toward the debt for this building. That's a combination of member loans and our commercial loan. And then we have about another $95,000 that's in operating. And so we are reducing that gap every year. From the year prior, we've continued to make progress on it. But I think it's important to see, and it's really important to know that is part of where we are, because we're going to have to keep managing our way through it. And sometimes we can look around and see how beautiful and resourced our building looks, and that's a little out of alignment with the work we have to do to really steward this building toward the future. You can go to the next slide. So this is just showing you what our expenses are. So the majority of our expenses are our staffing costs that resource the programs that we have here. So those 11 FTE or so that Gretchen pointed out, it's just shown two different ways. The pie graph on the left is a 2026, and then you can see them compared by section between the two. The building costs go down a little bit next year. Part of that is that we have had over $375,000 of member loans that have come to us and said we would like to forgive their loans. And so in the month of January, I'm going to be working on that, which reduces the interest that we owe on our internal loan with members. So again, it's relatively the same other than that one major change. You can go, wait. I did this thing where I made 4 slides labeled number 9. I don't usually use notes. I just so I'm trying to make sure I say all the things I want to say. Sorry, go back to the expenses for just a second. So within those expenses, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. We set salaries for staff in alignment with a set of recommendations from the Unitarian Universalist Association, which are based in the type of position and the region that we live in. And so we have been working on making progress to being where we would like to be with those salaries. And I'm happy to report we did make some progress this year. So we were at about 85% of the goal last year, and we're at about 89% overall. The majority of our staff are actually closer to 92, 93%, with our executive team has that biggest gap in the lower mid-80s. And that's important to know because it is work we still want to keep moving forward on. This is compared to the recommendations for the 2024 26 year, they have a summer calendar year, and so there are new recommendations that start mid-year that will be increased from what we did our comparison to this year. In particular, the salaries for our ministers is really important. That is a huge vulnerability, as churches are specifically, affected by who's in the pulpit and leadership, and so we really want to work to get that closed over the next few years. I'm grateful to the board who did quite a bit of deliberation this year and did come back to us with our budget and said we need to do a little bit better for our lead minister's salary, and so we're working toward that. The other thing I wanted to note is that healthcare costs are rising everywhere. Nope, this isn't news to any of you because I'm sure everybody has their own version of it. The healthcare we provide here went up by 20% for the premiums and had some reductions in care for 2026, and so it amounts to about 1% of the cost of living raise that our staff will receive that they have to pay back in those healthcare premiums, and so that's another challenge that we're trying to deal with and reconcile. But we're making good progress, and I just wanted to give those couple of updates on where we've been and the progress around the salaries. So go on to the next one. These are our sources of income. So blue, pink, orange, and really just purple and green are the ones that don't come from us. That small slice is external to our membership, and so that's really important to see that we fund what we do here. I'm really proud of the green slice of the pie, though. We will have over $100,000 in rental income this year. When you see Jen Powell, you can recognize that effort with her. We have our partners in Playcraft for Kids who are downstairs, and Center for Spiritual Living who meet here every Sunday afternoon that help study that. But it's a huge feat to have gone from our building has been open just at 2 years, and we have over $100,000 in rental income with aligned partners. This year we were able to be more specific about who we partnered in rental with, which is really aligned with how we would like our building to be used as a community resource. You can go to the next slide. So we have one major issue. I always get to present the fun major building issues, which is that I don't know if any of you noticed that sometimes the temperature does not match what you would expect it to be in one of the rooms. Like maybe it's a little bit cooler or hotter. Part of that is because we invested in this all-electric system, a kind of technology that is really leading for reducing our impact on the environment, but it was all custom. So there were some real challenges as we came on board with this system and figuring out how to make it work. And we have struggled from the day we opened it to try to understand some of the complexity of it. There's a team of folks who I have all their names on the next page, and I'll recognize them, who have done so much work around this, hours and hours and hours of analyzing how the system works, looking at our utility bills, and figuring out how we make the most of it. And at the end of about 18 months of doing this work, we have decided that the way forward is to purchase a shift in the control. So it's the way we want to think about it is it's that the thermostat isn't working the way it's supposed to, but the furnace is working just fine. So mechanically, the system is in perfect condition. The way that the software interacts with that system that makes the controls happen the way that we want them to, and allows us to gain that efficiency that we invested in, is where we're struggling. It was initially installed with a software that has been sold twice since since they installed it, and we have just struggled to get customer support around that. If you are really interested, there will be an article in The Grove that's coming out this afternoon, and that has the nitty-gritty details of the process and what's being done here. You can go to the next slide. I created a very extensive diagram of the decision-making that resulted in us moving forward to this decision. So it is a cost with a new system, which hurts. Like we wish that wasn't the case, that something we just installed needed this kind of investment. The total is going to be around $40,000. But the cost if we don't do it is that it's the ongoing cost of comfort, right? That the spaces you're in don't feel good. It is that the system is not operating as it's designed, which is the particular thing we invested in to have it operate efficiently. And then the risk of equipment damage, we don't have the ability to fix it very well right now. We don't have the right maintenance structure that allows us to make sure that if something happens, it can be taken care of, which would put us in a position in the future where something could happen and there might be a time where we don't actually have any control of our HVAC, and we would ideally not like to be in that situation. And then it also risks premature end life. It's a huge, the system overall was over $400,000, and so we don't want to risk that going away from functioning sooner than its life cycle should be. And then the ongoing staff time to try to manage the system and to get the support we need. This will put us in a place where it's very consistent and simple. I would love all of these people who participated in this committee to stand up, and Steve Tenbrake, you should stand up with them too as part of the solar committee. Steve in particularly has analyzed our bills from the city. Dan Butcher, who joined us partway through this year, Dan Siegfried, have been just deeply in the weeds of the system in a way that you guys, I just can't tell you. Like, I don't even understand their meetings, what they're talking about remotely. But they have really, really dug in and figured out, okay, here's how we move forward and take advantage of this thing that we invested in. And then Holly, Peg McMorris and Holly Ayala, who's on our staff, have all spent a lot of time working on this challenge. So like I said, there'll be an article in the Grove tonight. If for some reason you don't get it and you would like to see that article with the more details, please reach out to me and I'm happy to share it with you. This investment will be covered out of the recovered solar funds that we received earlier this year, the rebate on that we had said we couldn't count on that it would come back because of the shift in administration. And we did receive that earlier this year, was about $70,000. Thank you to Eric Martinson, he's not in this room, but he brought me the very specific forms that I needed to sign because it was not obvious what you should fill out for this rebate. But we did get it back. At the board meeting this month, I have a proposal going to them to allocate the funds to cover this, so it won't come out of our operating expenses either. You can go to the next slide. So then just finally thinking about the next 5 years, these are my last 2 slides, I promise. We have a 5-year forecast. That's not something we've had for years and years. We started doing a 5-year forecast 3 years ago of really focusing on how do we become a sustainable organization for the long term. I want to make sure everybody understands what our 5-year forecast is built on top of, because there are some priorities that we're going to be working towards. So first of all, it includes refinancing the mortgage. It includes the fundraising goals that we spoke about. That $1 million campaign will be happening over the course of this next year with funds to come in by the end of 2027. On our pledge income increasing as it has. So like I said, we've had a 14% increase so far this year. We'll see it go up from there, but our average is about 6%. So we have figured that in, that our personnel expenses stay around 3% annually in terms of increases, and that all other expenses are around a 2% inflation rate. So those things need to be in place, and then we're working toward gradually reducing the debt that we have with our member loans too. And so the way that's going to happen is 3 different times over the next 8 years that we'll pay out those loans. So then you can go to the next slide. But if you were here for this meeting last year, and I got to share the not so exciting news about where we were from a cash standpoint, and we had a decision to make, you can see that our plan puts us at being in a healthy cash level throughout the next 5 years. And then the top graph shows the expense to income slowly coming into balance. My hope is we'll get there sooner than that, but we are always going to be working toward making progress on reducing that gap between the two. So that's just kind of where we're looking at. Of course, things will change. They always do. If we don't, if we are not able to figure out the refinancing, that will be a major challenge we'll be talking about this time next year. I feel really hopeful that we can do that. And as I said, it's a major focus for my work this year. But we are thinking down the road. And that's the important thing, is that everybody is able to see and understand that. And I think that's my last slide. Yeah, so yeah, we will open up the conversation for.
Okay. Do you want the motion first?
Chris, motion first.
Okay. I want to invite Kathy Thomas up. There you are. Kathy is the treasurer of the board.
Hey everyone. I move that the congregation approve the board-affirmed FY 2026 budget as presented by the staff.
We don't require a second when a motion is made by a board member, but thank you, John.
No second is necessary.
We will take a few minutes for questions if anybody would like to ask a question who wasn't able to join us early in the week. Or there's also, I know there's at least 30 or so screens online. So in terms of us having a quorum of 54, I think is what it would be, or 55, we do have the numbers. But if anybody has a question about the budget or any of the financial presentations, happy to take a couple of minutes to answer questions. Is this one on? Yeah, okay, I think it's on right.
I look at the budget and I see that 70% of it has to do with staff. And my question is, while I know it's really important to try to match the UU guidelines, when we're in a deficit budget position, wouldn't it be smart to stay level at this point until we get our budget in order without raising people's salaries, budgets, bonuses, those kind of expenses added on to what we already have? Because the alternative, if we didn't do that, might be that we'd have to lay off people. I understand the required health care increases, but other increases when we're in a budget deficit situation don't seem realistic to me. If it was a business, they just say no raises this year because we're not doing so well.
It's a good question. I will say I haven't calculated it for this presentation, but the cost of turnover is significantly higher than the cost of keeping pace with the wages. And our staff who've been here as long as I have, my salary hasn't kept up with inflation. So we are, I think, barely doing what we need to do to keep strong staff in place. And I think if we were to do any less, it would really struggle. So although as an idea, when you put it on paper, when it comes to what groceries cost right now, people are technically working for less than they were hired for, some people, because of the rise of inflation and us trying to keep up. And we have not, the nonprofit industry as a whole, not just Foothills, has not kept up with the corporate industry in terms of the rise in salaries and from that perspective. In addition to we've had double-digit increases in healthcare premiums for the last, like 4 out of the last 5 years, I would say. Maybe we had one that was like right under 10, but.
I would like to say, as a member of the congregation, I have great confidence in the way staff and the board have gone about looking at that deficit. I think they are making good choices for us to be able to meet the growing mission with a very well thought through deficit. I have many years of business experience, 30 years as the financial officer of an engineering company, and I have, even as an older person, I have great confidence that the staff and the board are handling this very, very well.
Mary Lou.
I second that. In many ways, budget is a risk management tool. And one of the things you look at are what are the assumptions that are being made? How do those assumptions compare to history? And in those regards, I think we're spot on.
Thanks, George. take a couple more questions.
I would just like to say I have significant budget experience also, and I think this budget is a deficit that is too large, and I think it's very unwise, and I will not be voting for it.
Any other discussion?
I am Ken Thorpe, a member of the congregation. I would hope that they would restore the annual trip to Hopi and Navajo country that was discontinued a few years ago. This was really a life-changing experience for the ninth graders. Would be a good way to restore. And I recall that one of the members who took part in that became a physician who took part in the Indian country.
Thank you. Is there time for like one or two more?
So controlling costs is one way to deal with a deficit budget, but also growing income is another way to look at it. And so I'm very excited to see that that we're up 14%. I mean, that is incredible. With someone who had a lot of stewardship experience here in the past. Whoa, yeah, like, go team. But I'm just wondering, I mean, you were expecting 6% growth in the future because that's kind of on trend for us. I mean, how much hope do you have for your, your different, you had 3 different campaign goals that you were hoping for this year. Maybe you could say more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember, maybe this was the start of what you said, or I can't remember now where it came from, but it is very intentional and strategic, balancing both things, right? What are we doing to grow income? And so if we showed the pledge graph, which I didn't show in here, we in 6 years ago, our pledges were at 600,000. So we have done a lot of work on the side of raising income, and both the conversation we have as a community about our value of generosity and what it means to individually contribute. And so we have seen growth from our members who have been here for a long time. We've seen people who have been here a long time and haven't pledged in the past who have come on and pledged. And then we're seeing really good participation from our current members. I have a plan that we've been working toward to have some really in-depth discussions with our ministers, talking about where we are as an institution that we want to invite some of the newer folks into to consider being an investor in this space. We're primarily hoping to raise that $1 million outside of the congregation that participated in the 2019 capital campaign. We have received around $170,000 to date. That's just kind of you saw it was on your pledge form if you filled it out. We haven't talked about it too much. I feel confident about it, and it won't happen on its own. We definitely have some work to do. I had a number of people who responded to the pledge campaign saying they were interested in the member loan piece. And the work that it has taken to build up our pledge campaign has created capacity for my work to be able to focus on some other things. Now, this was our most successful and honestly probably the least taxing on the amount of time I've spent, because we have systems in place. We have a team in place who's working through that. And so we will be devoting staff time specifically to achieving those ends. And yeah, based on where we are and the size we are at, we tried to be very conservative about income and realistic about expenses. And that 6% trend goes back pretty far, like 90s, maybe. I mean, it's been a long time that that number has come over, so we feel relatively confident with it. Maybe time for one more. Should be
one quick Katie. Thing on that, Katie.
Oh yeah.
Just one quick thing on that. Just remember I said worship is a leading indicator. So, in terms of what's potential,
where growth is. Those are people who are, like, in a lot of cases, not yet in partnership. So there's just a lot of potential, like that the growth in worship indicates that we have people that are not yet even in the conversation that we are inviting in.
We have a target list of about 75 households of people who didn't, like from a participation standpoint, are where we would expect somebody to start giving but didn't naturally participate in the pledge process. There's a lot of education that goes into it. Most people who arrive here are either not churched before they come, so understanding our financial structure is entirely new to them, or they maybe come from a background where they had a negative experience with church and are pretty sort of skeptical to take that step. And so we do a lot of work along that process to say what we're doing with our funds and how we're funded to educate people and invite them into the work. So there's a group of folks that will be, that reaching our goal in December does not mean we won't still keep working on pledges all year long. We will. This last year we had 90,000 come in from the beginning, from when we ended in December before the end of the year. And obviously this last year was a bigger year than I would expect on most years, but I do feel quite hopeful that we'll actually be making a pretty good chunk of the deficit piece up during the operating year this year. And it's my job to show you, the scenario, the conservative scenario that we built. Did you have a couple of online questions?
Not a question, but Lisa online requests that we not cut off the questions until all are heard and answered.
Okay, I think we have answered all the questions. Did you have another question?
I hope you'll look carefully at the music program. I think there's too much repetition, and we need a bit of familiarity with some of the songs that we used to know.
Thank you. Anything else specific to the budget?
And to follow that point, I don't either.
Oh, they can't hear you online.
To follow that point, just occurred to me, are we taking into account that we're going to expand our music staff in the budget that you're putting forward?
We are not expanding our music staff. It will be a transition. So our current music director, Sophia, will be coming off staff, which was always the plan. And yes, this budget is very specific to the staffing plan for 2026.
When I think about it, this new facility is like a new company. And new companies don't usually plan on making money for decades.
It took Amazon 8 years.
If all the questions have been asked and answered, then I think we are ready for a vote on the motion. Could you put the motion back up on the screen? I don't know if that's possible. Back it up a little bit. There we go. Okay. As you can read it, I can't read it from there. The congregation approve the board affirmed fiscal year 2026 budget as presented by the staff. All in favor, raise your hand.
Keep your hands up
And
for
we
just
need
a
to be
couple
counting
minutes.
here.
And then online, we should have a poll. Okay. 16, I think. You're okay. You're good. Yeah.
Did you get all of the yeses?
Yes.
We're ticking.
30.
Okay.
Do you have 13? Do you have 13 yeses? Okay. They haven't. So we have reached quorum, or enough of the amount that we need to pass the budget.
What's the total?
They're still coming in.
Okay.
But we are over 55, which is
Over what?
over 55.
55? Okay. All those opposed, please raise your hand. online?
Stand by. We have unanimous online.
20.
Unanimous online? Okay.
Okay, so that's 50.
So I didn't,
We have 31, yes.
Katie, do you have the numbers?
77, right? Yeah. Wait. Yeah, 77, and then 2 no's, I believe.
Great. The motion passes. We now have a budget for next year. I think the next slide after the, it goes back, there are upcoming, save the dates? Yeah, it's up there. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to close. As we close this congregational meeting, I want to say a few things. I know that you all appreciate and are grateful for the ministerial and executive leadership that we are so fortunate to have. I don't think we can thank them enough. But what you might not know is how much our whole Foothills community is also a recognized leader throughout the UA. As you may know, last month we hosted the leaders of 3 UU churches from Minneapolis, Milwaukee, and Arlington for an exchange of ideas and to learn from each other. They came here because they recognized the leadership of our ministers, our executive director, and our entire community. All of our guests expressed how amazing it was to see our church in action. They were so impressed with the amount of volunteer commitment that we have here and the participation of so many in all that we do. That slide that Gretchen showed on all the active teams is truly remarkable. This spring, we will be hosting another UU visit, and we hope that this kind of shared learning experience will catch on through the UUA world. No question, we have great leadership, and we also, most importantly, have an extremely committed congregation right along with it. You are amazing, and you have shown that commitment again today. As we continue to move through our visioning process, we can move boldly into our future only because of your trust, your caring, and your generosity. Thank you to each and every one of you for your very, very essential part in making Foothills the wonderful community that it is. And with that sense of gratitude, our meeting is adjourned.